Hi folks, I had a question on exercise 2-20 from chapter 2, and I know this one's one that I get asked an awful lot in the classroom section, so I thought we'd go through and work a few of these out of 220 to make sure everybody can kind of get the idea of what's happening and what you should do. Okay, let's start with A. Even though A has been done for us, I want you to kind of get at least my thought pattern down and then try to put your own spin on your own thought pattern for it. It says on A that a $3,600 debit to rent expense is posted as a $1,340 debit. Okay, notice it didn't say anything about the credit. So in this instance, we're going to assume, rightly so, that the credit was done correctly. Okay, so I'm going to draw a T account, and I apologize for my horrible artistic and writing skills. It's kind of hard to work on one of these boards with a pen in your hand. It's kind of like writing your name on your credit card on that little touch screen that they have in the stores. So we have rent expense. Rent expense should be $3,600. Okay. Now, for my sake, because I'm so much of a visual learner, I'm going to create the credit of $3,600. Okay. You don't have to name the account if you don't want to. I'm going to. I like to put names to things. So in this entry, we should have debited rent expense for $3,600 and credited cash or accounts payable for $3,600. Okay. So now let's see. What does it say was done? It says no, this was not done. Instead, rent expense was debited by $1,340. So here's our mistake. We should have put in $3,600. We put in $1,340. Okay, now column 1 says the difference between the debit and the credit columns. And this is the reason why I like to add the other side of the equation, because remember, we have to have two things happening in double entry accounting. We have to have at least one debit and we have to have at least one credit. Okay, so we have a debit of $3,400. We have a credit of $3,600. Are we in balance? No, we're not. What's the difference? So if you subtract out the difference between the $3,600 and the $1,340, you'll see that the difference is the $2,260 that's in that column 1, the difference between the debits and the credits column. Okay, now column 2 says which column has the larger total. Well, if there's there's $1,340 on the debit side, and $3,600 on the credit side, which column's larger? Well, that's going to be the credit side. Okay. Column 3 says identify the account or accounts that are incorrectly stated. Well, hopefully everybody can see that it's just rent expense. Rent expense should have been $3,600. Rent expense was $1,340. Okay, so rent expense is the account with the incorrect amount. Okay, column 4 says the amount that the account or accounts is over or understated by. Well, rent expense should be $3,600. Rent expense is $1,340. Okay, what if I were to come in here and put in $10,000 balance in there? If it was a $10,000 balance before this entry, it should be, if we did it correctly, $13,600. But now, because we did the posting incorrectly, it's only $11,340. So rent expense is going to be understated because it should have been a lot more. So rent expense is understated by the $2,260. Okay, so let's try to apply that to B. if my stuff will erase. In B, it says that a $6,500 credit to cash was mistakenly posted twice. It says it was 2 credits. Okay, so let me get my credit, get my T accounts. Even though it's been over 30 years since I started accounting, I like my T accounts. It gives me that visual cue that I need. Alright, so it should have been $6,500 in my cash account. Let me get, so was the debit done correctly? Yes, the debit was done correctly because it doesn't tell us anything about that. We could use an expense account, we could use an asset account, anything with a normal debit balance on it. Okay, I'm going to use supplies. We bought supplies for cash. Oh, and let me get my wrong, I put in the wrong amount. I'm back on the first one, 6,500. There we go. Alright, so the debit was done correctly because we're not given any information. What happened to cash though? That's right. $6,500 was put in there 2 different times. Okay, so we have $6,500 on the debit side. What do we have on the credit side? What does this amount come to? The $13,000. Okay, so the difference between the debit and credit columns, column number 1, which one, what's the amount? 6,500? Yes, because there's 6,500 there, there's 13,000 there, so the difference is the $6,500. Okay, the column with the larger total, is the debit column larger or is the credit column larger? That's right, the credit column is larger. Okay, column number 3 says identify the account or accounts that are incorrectly stated. Well, we know the debit was done correctly. It only talked about cash, so cash has to be the account that's incorrectly stated. Now on 4, the amount that the account or accounts is over or understated by. Okay, let's put in, what's the normal balance of cash? Normal balance of cash is a debit. So let me put in a balance in there so you can kind of see through. Alright, if we had a $50,000 debit balance, we should have only taken out $6,500, right? So that should have left us a balance of $43,500. Instead, we took out $13,000. So what happens to the balance? It goes down even further, right? So the balance in our account after the $13,000 is $37,000. So because we took out too much money out of our normal debit balance account, cash is going to be understated by the $6,500. Kind of hoping that's making sense to everybody. Let's try C and see what happens, because in C we're dealing with more than one incorrect account. Notice that it says in C that a $10,900 debit to the withdrawals account was accidentally debited to the capital account. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. I'm going to put in, there's my name, and I'm going to do a shorthand of W/D for withdrawals. We should have put in $10,900 into our withdrawals account. Okay, normally when the owner withdraws, usually the owner is withdrawing cash, so I'm going to use cash as my credit account just so that I have something to use. Okay, so what happened? Was the withdrawals account debited? No, it was not. What was debited instead? That's right, it was the capital account. I'm going to put the name with my X's, and then I'm going to abbreviate with CAP. So instead of doing a $10,900 debit to withdrawals, we did a $10,900 debit to the capital account. Okay, so now that we got everything laid out, column 1, the difference between the debit and the credit columns. Is there anything? No, because we have $10,900 on the debit side, we have $10,900 on the credit side. So you can put a 0, you could put a line through it, you could put N/A, because there's not a difference. Okay. Column 2. Which column has the larger total? That's right, neither one of them, because they're the same. So again, put a slash, put a dash, put an N/A in it. Okay, now let's look at column 3. Identify the account or the accounts that are incorrectly stated. Don't we have 2 accounts in this instance that were done wrong? The amount wasn't put into the withdrawals account. The amount was put into the capital account instead. So both of these accounts, the withdrawals and the capital accounts, are both incorrectly stated. Okay, now for column D, we need to really think a little bit above and beyond again. Let's put in balances. Let's say he has taken out, no, let's use 100,000. Let's say he's taken out, his business is doing well. He's taken out $100,000 over the course of the period, and he's just taken out another $10,900 for personal use. Okay. Let's say he has a balance of 200,000. Oops, come back here. 200,000 in his capital account. Okay. So what should the balance be in the withdrawals account if we did the entry correctly? Right, we should have 1,100. I always do that all the time. $110,900 should be in the withdrawals account. How much is actually in there? Right, just the $100,000. Okay, normal balance of the withdrawals is on the debit side. So we don't have enough showing in there, right? Should be 110,900. It's only 100,000. So the withdrawals account is understated by the $10,900. Now what about the capital account? We goofed over here and put it in the wrong account. If we have a, again, make-believe balance in there, what's happening? What's the normal balance of the capital account? It's the credit side, right? Okay, so what should happen here is if we put a debit over here, that's going to lower the balance, right? That's going to be 189,100 instead of the $200,000. So can everyone see that the capital account is also going to be understated by the $189,000? Or I'm sorry, by the $10,900, because that's bringing it down to the $189,100 balance. So sometimes it really helps. I'll throw in, extra information just so that I can see a clear path. Cash was done correctly, withdrawals wasn't done, capital was done by mistake. Okay, folks, go through, try D, E, F, and G. Contact me if you have any problems with those. Okay, think through it.